Welcome back to Day Talk, fellow talkers, and on this episode we're gonna talk about Lapuanliike, a Lapua movement in English, if you will, a 1930s Finnish right-wing slash fascist political player in Finnish society. They conducted an act of violence and political terror during their short stay in Finnish political scene. But before we start talking about that, as always, please hit that like button. That is paramount for our channel's visibility. Let's get us there with 100 likes. Also, hit that subscription button and the notification bell so you won't miss any of our future episodes. So, let's talk about this Lapua movement, Lapuanliike, that was far-right anti-communist political movement that operated in Finland from 1929 to 1932. Movement's open goal was to eradicate communism from Finnish society and Finnish political scene. Their biggest supporters were found from Pohjanmaa. The movement was led by an activist and a farmer named Vihtori Kosola. As the name of Lapua movement hints, it was born in Lapua area, the home of its leader, Vihtori Kosola. Motivations behind the movement were rooted deeply to 1918's civil war. Members of so-called White Guards suojeluskunnat in Finnish were disappointed with the moderate parliamentary democracy that Finland had, while the communists and leftists were starting to be more and more active in everyday politics of the country. The right-wing people who were extremely afraid of potential Red Scare rallied around this anti-communism theme. To achieve their goals, the movement threatened politicians with violence and political terror. Lapua movement held public meetings, had delegations to further their agendas. Often they showed force with mass meetings and wrote letters, opinion pieces, and notes to get their point across. One of the most infamous methods that this movement used to terrorize their political opponents, decision makers, and influencers in society was called muilutus. It was sort of a kidnapping and even in some cases unofficial deportation from the country. The usual case was that the members of Lapua movement kidnap and force known leftist, communist, or even a moderate right-wing politician to a car. They drove the kidnapped party to another county while singing patriotic songs, threatening and beating their victims. In some cases, kidnap was driven to a Russian border and forced to go to Russia. This was called putting a man on Ikitie, forever road. Using this so-called law of Lapua, the movement and its members committed assaults, sabotages, and even political murder. Surprisingly, many of the Lapua movement's goals were met. In the summer of 1930, the communist newspapers were cancelled, communist members of parliament were arrested, and new government was formed in favor of the movement. This was known as the second government of Svinhuvud. This government was more right-wing than any of its predecessors. Lapuan movement were offered a spot in the government, but they refused. In a way, they refused to carry responsibility in politics. In the fall of 1930, the newly elected parliament issued so-called communist laws. They made all the communist activity forbidden in Finland. After the movement achieved its visible goals, their popularity started to wind down. Still, hardcore elements and the core of the movement continued their crusade and radicalized. Their endgame was to ban all left-side activities and introduce right-wing dictatorship based solely on force. The last true show of force that they were able to do was Mäntsälä Kapina, the Mäntsälä Rebellion in the winter of 1932. This was an actual attempt to overthrow Finnish government, a coup d'etat with weapons and violence. This kind of use of open violence and terror led to a majority of moderate Finns to stop supporting Lapua movement. People didn't appreciate the threatening atmosphere that had been created. In the end, the movement was effectively shut down using tools and mechanisms that they themselves had used to eradicate communism. In May of 1932, Lapua movement was finally banned and its activities were shut down. Then, isänmaallinen kansanliike, EKL, or in English, Patriotic People's Movement, followed the forbidden Lapua movement. The three major founding members were Herman Kummerus, Vilho Annala, and Erkki Räikkönen. Lapua movement's former leader Vihtori Kosola was imprisoned for his part in Mäntsälä rebellion at the time of formation, but the leadership was officially kept in reserve for him. This openly fascist successor started officially 14 June in 1932 at Lapua. This time the movement acted as political party and its main goals were banishing the Social Democrats using means of parliamentary rules. When Vihtori Kosola was released from prison, he was appointed to lead the Patriotic People's Movement, aka this EKL. He was reluctant because he didn't really accept the new party's program. Kosola was eventually sidelined and dethroned from the movement's leadership before his death in 1936. In the parliamentary elections of 1933, Patriotic People's Movement formed an alliance with National Coalition Party. They got moderate success in these and coming elections. They were even in the government during the Continuing War under a Prime Minister Rangel from 1941 to 1943. The party was dissolved and banned after the war on September 23, 1944. This was according to a peace agreement that was agreed with Finnish government and Soviet Union. Along with Lapua movement, the left and the right-wing radicalism was actually eradicated from Finnish politics. Parliamentarism that had been threatened by them grew stronger and set the base for Finnish consensus politics. So how should we see this Lapua movement today? Interpretations vary and might be quite controversial based on who you ask about them. The leading figures of Lapua movement denied being fascist, but when you look at the background, methods, the motivations and the deeds that the movement did, that tells you another story. Now, Lapua movement is seen part of European fascist and right-wing movements of the 1930s. This has been They Talk. Thanks for joining us. Before you go, please leave your thoughts about this episode and the Lapua movement on the comment section under the video. Hit that like button, subscription button, and the notification bell so you won't miss any of our future episodes. See you next time.